made a lot of decisions already today? Just like how many decisions you have made by 10:07 this morning.
Wow.
I mean, you've decided to get up. You've decided to get dressed. You've decided maybe to eat breakfast. You've decided to come here. You've decided to sit where you're sitting and have conversations. I wonder, could you guess how many decisions you already have made just today alone? 100? 500? 1,000? Let's just say for a minute that we've all been awake for 4 hours. Some people have been awake more, some people have been awake less, but let's say 4 hours we've been awake. Based on the research that's out there, if we've been awake for 4 hours, we have already made over 8,000 conscious decisions.
Whoa.
So that means that in a waking day, we make over 35,000 conscious decisions. Every one of us.
Okay.
A little overwhelming. Shocking to think that we make that many decisions. But those are the decisions that don't necessarily matter a whole lot. They're just the decisions that we have to make. Of the decisions that we make about food alone, just what to eat, what not to eat in one day, 226 decisions that your mind is making about food. Well, so what happens when we have big decisions to make? Decisions that we can't just make like that. Decisions like which refrigerator to buy, or how to solve a problem that's hard to solve, or how to respond to somebody who says something that we're confused about. I mean, the bigger choice is how do we make those decisions? And some of you make pros and cons lists. You weigh out the options. Some of us invite a friend to join in the conversation, and we got to talk it out and figure out, well, I need to verbalize it, so I need to get it out there. Some of us make a decision and we sleep on it. We decide, I'll figure it out tomorrow and see if that's the right one. And there's lots of ways to make big decisions. Jesus made a really, really strange decision. It's a decision that we all know. We've all heard this decision before. Some people have even memorized this decision that Jesus made. You've read it, I guarantee you've read it or heard it in church before. But Jesus made this decision, and it is so odd. It's odd because of what had happened in the previous 10 days before the decision. Just in those 10 or so days before, one of Jesus' closest friends had betrayed him and sold him out. Another of his friends had denied that he even knew him at all. His whole group of friends basically said, we want nothing to do with you. And then once they did actually get back together, a lot of them doubted what had even been going on for the last few days. And so, I mean, in the middle of that, Jesus makes a decision. And, I wonder, how would I feel if those things, those last 10 days had happened to me? I would feel a bit discouraged. Like, there are some things that we need to correct before we move on. There's clearly some problems to address before we go ahead. I'd probably be pretty reserved about doing anything new, or entrusting anything more, or taking some more steps. Maybe there's some teaching, some trust issues we need to work through before we go ahead. But Jesus makes a very big and bold decision. In the midst of that, Jesus hands over to his disciples the biggest mission ever. I mean, he basically says, you take over where I left off. You walk in my shoes, and you carry on my work. Now, Jesus didn't just give that to the disciples. He gave that mission to us too, which really begs the question, do we understand this mission and why did he make this decision in the first place? Because it was a strange decision. So we're going to look at this decision that Jesus made to give us and give the disciples this mission and try to figure out what's it all about and why did he give us this mission and make this decision in the first place. Just to bring us up to speed and recap, this all happens right after the resurrection. Jesus has been denied by Peter. He has been sold out by Judas. He has been ignored and pushed aside by the disciples. And he has died. He was put in the tomb. He was found by the women. And the disciples then go to the place where Jesus said, you need to go there. I'm going to meet you there. They meet Jesus there. He appears to them. And the disciples, some believe and some doubt. This is the last thing that Matthew includes in his gospel. There's no other story after it. There's no other event. There's no other conversation. This is the last thing that Matthew includes in his gospel. As if to say, this is what I want to leave you with. This is what you've got to know about following Jesus. So here's the decision in the last part of Matthew. Then the 11 disciples left for Galilee, going to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some of them doubted. Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And that's the end of the book. That's what we're left with. That's the final word, that's the parting thought that Matthew gives us. Now, what is Jesus doing? And why did Jesus make that decision? So we're going to look at 5 things that the mission is and the mission is not, to try to understand why Jesus made this decision. I have a few questions for Jesus after reading that. Perhaps you do too. Some of my questions might be, what are you thinking? Why would you decide to do this? Are you quite sure about this? Should we take a moment and talk about this before we proceed? Do you realize what just happened, Jesus, in the last 10 days? And are you applying that to what you're deciding right now? These are not your best friends. Perhaps they're not your greatest enemies, but they're certainly not your biggest fans. Is this really the wisest choice to make? This section is called the Great Commission. And it's the Great Commission because it's Jesus' great, big commission to the disciples to go and do these things. It's been memorized, it's been sorted through, it's been dissected to try to figure out what is Jesus doing. My question is, are these the right people to be doing it? Because I can think of a load of other people who are more qualified to do this mission. Missionaries, trained and ready missionaries, would probably be good at doing this. People who are dedicating their lives to seeking out new people who don't yet know Jesus and introducing them. I think people who have advanced degrees in like Jesusology, and they've gone to the College of Jesus and they understand everything there is to know about Jesus, those are the people that I would think get the Great Commission. Or people who've had lifelong experiences with God, with Jesus. Generations of family that have brought them up in these ways. So it's seeped into them and it's all through them. Those are the kind of people that are Great Commission sort of people. But Jesus didn't give it to them alone. Jesus gave the commission to the disciples, and Jesus gave it to us. So what is Jesus doing? And what is this mission, and what is it not? First thing that it is, and first thing that it's not. Our mission is not a training program. It is a loving relationship. Now, we've all been through training programs for jobs, or training programs for volunteer work, or training programs for how to be a parent, or all kinds of different things. And the model of a training program is there's an educated, trained, experienced expert who is training people who are not educated and expert and trained people. So it's the expert trains the pupil model. And that's good because it imparts important information. But if Jesus' mission is a training program, then that means it's the expert who trains the pupils, and then the pupils have to become experts to then continue training others. And that is definitely not how I feel. I do not feel like a trained expert from Jesus. And I have a hunch that most of us don't feel like trained experts in the ways of Jesus. We might have some good days, but we also have some not as good days. So it may not be so much a training program. This is one of those moments where it's good to let other parts of the Bible help us understand this part of the Bible. There was a time when Jesus' disciples were discussing what's some of the most important things. And in fact, some of the leaders of the Jewish faith came to Jesus and they were asking him, what's the most important thing? And perhaps you remember the conversation. They talk about what's the most important law? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And Jesus says, and to love your neighbor as yourself. The most important thing we can ever do in following God and following Jesus is to love. This comes up again in 1 John when John is discussing what are the most important things there are. And the most important thing is this new commandment, which is basically just a fresh and a new way of saying what was already said before, which is to love one another. The most important thing we can do is love one another. And this comes up, of course, so many more times in other writers in the New Testament. Paul and Peter pick this up, others pick this up, that love is the most important thing we can do. Could it be that loving other people is the best way to fulfill the mission that Jesus has given us? If it's not a training program to become an expert in all these things, it could be loving other people. And as we love other people, that's the beginning of somebody discovering who Jesus is and becoming a disciple. When somebody has loved you, done something for you, treated you in a way that is truly loving and gracious, do we normally turn that away and say, I don't want that. I don't need that. We love when people treat us generously and graciously and lovingly. Regardless if you deserve it or not, how wonderful that is. If I was to love somebody else, they're probably not going to say, no, I don't need that. They might ask, why are you treating me this way? I don't think I deserve this. But they're surely not going to reject it and say, no, I want no part of that. And when we love other people, it is a great opportunity to be able to show them what the love of Jesus for every one of us is like. But surely at some point there's got to be some training and some information transfer and some education and some expertise happening. I mean, Jesus didn't just say, go out and love people. He said, go out and teach them and train them and baptize them. So surely there's got to be some meat to this at some point. And yes, of course there does. But those are secondary. Those are thirdly. Those are after the first step comes. And the most important thing to Jesus, and the most important thing to God about how we follow them is to love others. Then why would that not be the first step in being able to make disciples, as Jesus calls us to make? So, who does this? Is this something I do? Is this something each of us does? Who does the mission? Well, our mission is not just for me. Our mission is for us. Jesus said it over and over, go and make disciples and teach and baptize. And when he said that, it's not like Jesus was in a one-on-one room with each of us, giving us this individual commission to do these things and go and make. When he's talking to a group. And when he's talking, it's a plural sort of a command and a call to go and do this. All of us go and do this. All of the followers of Jesus and God in the world, this is our call and our command. So it's not something that I just do on my own or you do on your own. It's something we all do. When Jesus went and sent out the disciples, because he did a couple of other times to do different things, he sent them out in pairs. He sent them out as a group. He never sent them out by themselves and say, you each go on your own way and then you come back and report to me. No, they went out in pairs and groups. And we all know that is such a good thing. We encourage each other. We help each other. We inspire each other. We correct each other. We push each other. We take risks when we're with each other. It's good to do things together. And so this mission is not just for me, it's for us. Third thing, our mission is not possible on our own power if we have God's power. See, Jesus said this thing right at the beginning, this peculiar phrase. He said, all authority in heaven and earth is given to me, therefore go. Why did he say all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me? Why did he start with that? Like, we all know what authority and power are. Think of somebody in your life who has authority. Somebody who you give authority to. Somebody who has authority in your life. I think of mentors. I think of some teachers. I think of some well-respected people. Some people who influence me. They have authority in my life. When there's authority that comes into our lives, it lets us do things and gives us permission and pushes us to do things that we wouldn't otherwise. But it's not our own. It comes from somebody else. So when Jesus said, all authority and power on earth has been given to me, he's saying, God has given me, Jesus, all of this power and authority, and I am extending that to you. So when we live our lives of making disciples and going and doing this work and loving others, we don't do it by our own power and authority. We do it because Jesus has given us God's power and authority. And that's the power and authority that we go with. Fourth thing, our mission does not happen immediately. It happens over time. And there's some things that do happen immediately. Pencils get sharpened immediately. Clothes get wet immediately. But there's some things that happen over time. Problems get sorted out over time. Clothes dry over time. Some things just take longer than others. And when it's something deeper that has to sink in, that's one of those things that it takes time. How long did it take for the disciples to get made? Well, the indication we have from Jesus is it took 3 years. He spent 3 years with that. Now, of course, that's not a magic number. That's not a magic duration of time. It's not something to just copy, but it took a long time. It didn't just happen overnight. For these disciples to be formed in a new way, to have a new mind and a new heart and a new set of priorities for their lives. It does not happen overnight to make disciples. It's large steps that have to happen for disciples to be made. So it takes time. Rest assured, Jesus is not going anywhere. The last thing he says is, I will be with you even to the end of the age. Jesus is not going anywhere. Jesus is with us the whole time, no matter how long it takes. Fifth thing, our mission is not the end. It's the beginning. See, the funny thing is, it is the end of the book of Matthew. It's the last thing that Matthew says. It's the last thing we're supposed to hear in Jesus' parting words to them and to us. But it's just the beginning. Literally, it's the beginning of the church. I mean, the next book, the next part of the story, of course, is Acts, and that's where the church is born. And we have this whole new episode that happens that's launched with the church. This is the beginning of the church. And it's also the beginning of loads of different people's lives. As we step into other people's lives and love them with the love that Jesus has given us. Therefore, go, River Cross Church, and make disciples of our neighborhoods, and our stores, and our family, and our friends, and our workplaces, and our classrooms. Teaching them to follow the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and modeling for them the ways that Jesus has taught us, so that the ways of Jesus can lead them. And be sure to remember that Jesus is with us, even to the end of the age. Let's pray.
Amen.